Okay, well, now that everybody's taken their seat and gotten comfortable, let me welcome you to the third session of this four-part series on metaphor, or otherwise known as how to think properly, how to think creatively. And as we've discussed in the previous two classes, the metaphor, the principle of metaphor was central to Lyndon LaRouche's thinking, and also to his science of economics. And I will just give a little preview or pre-announcement that LaRouche PAC will be launching a major campaign to try and get some economic sanity into the country. Already this has begun with a report from Bob Ingram, which is up on our website, on the Davos meeting, which sort of lays out the political nature, the immediate nature of why this is important. And we will be launching further articles and campaigns on getting rid of the Federal Reserve Board, establishing a national bank, and gearing up the economy to become productive again, breaking free from the globalists and building a mass movement in support of LaRouche's economics, because that is what has to be implemented in 2022 and again in 2024. But in order to really understand how that economics works, you need a leadership constituency, which I think begins with the people on this call and has to irradiate out from there and expand out from there, of people who are developing the competence in the fundamental principles of economics, as LaRouche understood them. And as LaRouche emphasized, economics is really the application and development of human creativity and nothing else. It has nothing to do with money, prices, all this interest rates, all these things that people think have to do with economics. It has to do with the development and the application of the creative powers of the human mind. And the human mind understands creativity, not just is creative, but it is also self-reflexive. It investigates how it works itself. It investigates its own creativity. And this is done primarily through art, but also this is really the basis of all science. So if you want to have a progressive scientific, a scientific and technologically progressing economy, you have to understand creativity. That's, I guess, sort of a simple way of really pointing to why metaphor was so important in LaRouche's thinking, and something that has to become conscious to any political leadership that wants to turn this disastrous direction the country's in around. Now, the first class we did was, we had Dan Leach, poet and political organizer for Lyndon LaRouche, on, and that session can be viewed on our website. And last week I spoke about the importance of metaphor and poetry from the standpoint of science. And tonight we're happy to have Miwa Steger joining us, because she's a musician, very talented musician and thinker about music. She's also a political organizer, has been for a long time, collaborated with LaRouche personally for many years. And so she's probably situated better than anyone else to try and to present to us really the significance of music. And this was central to LaRouche's own intellectual life, but not just for entertainment or for his own enjoyment, although he did really enjoy music and playing music and listening to music and talking about music and so forth. But LaRouche also spoke about the centrality of music, classical music, for a culture of a advancing society. And he wrote a lot about this, and I would recommend again the paper that we've been talking about called, that he wrote in prison, called On the Subject of Metaphor, which will give you his personal elaboration of the significance of this. But we want to acquaint you with these ideas. Now, I know that for some people, some of this is new. You may not be very well acquainted with classical music. You may think you don't like classical music. You may think you love classical music. But either way, I think if you turn your attention, give Miwa your full attention, and really concentrate on what she's saying, it will open up a whole new world for you. And that's what politics is really about, opening up new worlds for people so that they can realize that the way they've been accustomed to thinking is really not working anymore. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Miwa. And as I said, we're very happy to have her, and it's we'll have time for questions, but give her your full attention right now, because this is something that anybody who wants to make America great again better understand this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I am unmuted. Okay, thank you very much. That was quite an introduction. So hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to really share with you what I've been thinking about, what I've been investigating, what I've been discovering. I intend to make this a discovery and a process for everyone, because as we've investigated over the past weeks, in this particular class series, they're really, for us to be able to overturn and defeat this enemy that we have, the questions of empire, because I think most people know we are in a war, we're waging a war, and how to defeat it is we have the capability of really investigating and embodying profound ideas and conceptions that have shaped human thought for thousands of years. And in particular, in pulling this together, I really started thinking through, well, it really does seem like the most profound debates have centered around some of the questions of human thought, or the debates that have shaped human thought for thousands of years have been centered around whether or not truth exists, whether or not God exists, what is God, or rather, what is God that man is made in his image? Those are highly provocative questions. And entire civilizations have gone to war over these questions, in particular, the question of truth, the question of God, the question of whether or not it's intelligible. And I would classify it as intelligible rather than something as knowable, because intelligible means there's something active, more active about that, the idea of being intelligible than knowable. Knowable seems like a dead objective fact. So just keeping that in mind, like I said, these are extremely provocative questions. I claim not to have the answer. So that's why we're gonna be involved in a real investigation here. And I have quite a bit to go through, I think, at least historically. So I'd like to set the foundation for this, because what I just put forward, these questions of truth, the question of God, specifically, what is God that man is made in his image? I mean, it's brought out the best of mankind, which you would identify as the periods of Renaissance, or the worst of mankind. In absence of this investigation, in absence of these kinds of thoughts and discoveries, have definitely resulted in periods of war and pestilence and really disintegration. So let me just set the foundation here for our ensuing discussion. I'd like to just share something that really, it's a book that has been read for thousands of years. I'll just put it that way. And this is Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. Okay, here's it. It said, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. So I'd like that to serve as the basis, as the foundation for this investigation. I call it an investigation because it really is. You never stop learning. You never stop discovering things, especially in the hands of Bach or Beethoven, or even in this case, what I just presented to you, the quote from the Bible, from Genesis in particular, that people are still studying these conceptions. And really, the fundamental question is whether or not this is intelligible. And Mr. LaRouche has really written about this, has built an entire movement based on the fact that, yes, it is intelligible. How it's intelligible is what we're going to discover. Because, I mean, entire cultures, if you think about culture per se, have been shaped by this conception, what I just presented to you with Genesis and those verses. And I would even posit, I would consider the creation of our constitutional republic really premised upon this idea. And so you can think about culture. Culture is not trends. It's not, you know, fads and trends that have a very quick turnover rate. You're really talking about culture as a complex or a complexity of human thought and change in human thought and knowledge that really has been accumulated over thousands of years. So it's not short term. It's really why, if we want to overturn and destroy this enemy, we have to investigate and embody these principles. And that means you have to kind of relive these discoveries. So let me just come forward here. Sorry. Okay, so let me get some water. So I had a chart that's in the box, not in the box, but I think Keisha can put it up, the population chart. What I really want to get after is the essence of what is responsible for the explosion of population that you witnessed there. You can tell just by looking at it that there is just an explosion. And this is just, I'm just using this as a visual for you to really have a visual in your mind of what it means. Because, can you go back to it? Yeah. So at the point where you really see the population growth level take off is around 1800. And what I want to get at is really the essence of what was responsible for driving that kind of population growth. Because fundamentally, the crisis that we're in today is not COVID. It's not the lockdowns. It's not the rhinos. It's not the Democrats. It's not the vaccines. The crisis is that we all confront the fact that the population has plummeted. The rates of population growth have plummeted across the board. That is something we should be concerned with, because when we look at this, you have to wonder, that man from like 400 BC, when it starts to begin to move, increasingly in an upward direction around ancient Greece, you had obviously a bit of a dip during the Dark Age, Black Death, but it just takes off. So you can take that down. I mean, that's really just have that imprinted in your mind tonight as we really work through this, because it's really the essence of how we can regain that, how we can begin to really push the boundary conditions of thought for the human population, and make more discoveries and apply more discoveries. So this is really a primary source of intelligible truth, because we're going to investigate some of the principles of discovery, which really increase mankind's power in and over nature. And that's your metric. Your metric is to see whether man has the capability of supporting more man per capita, per square kilometer, and in what way. So it really does encompass everything, all the discoveries in arts, in culture, in science, in the natural sciences, in technology, industry, because it comes from the conception that we began with, which is man is made in the living image of God. And to make that knowable, you have to engage in a process. So let me just, we're going to get into some of the meat of the discussion here, because I wanted to introduce two very important figures, actually three main points of the discussion, which the discussion should really center around, which is another part of the Bible, specifically the Gospel of John, and how Bach takes his inspiration from a specific section of the Gospel of John, and then what Beethoven does with it later on. And so you can just join me on this journey, because it's quite a journey. So let me just begin with the Gospel of John, which is really quite profound. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be, but I would definitely encourage you to read the King James Version and let us know what you think. But essentially, the Gospel of John, and specifically around what Bach takes from it, goes through the story of the suffering and the death of Jesus Christ. And Bach composed a piece of music called the St. John Passion. He began the composition in 1723, but it was something that he continued to work on throughout his entire life, really up until the second to last year of his death, until his death, 1749. And if you read the Gospel of John, like I said, the story is of the suffering and the death of Jesus Christ. What Bach focuses on is he really concentrates on Christ as the eternal and omnipotent figure and ruler, rather than the suffering, or rather than his suffering. And so in this composition, you have, it really is 5 parts, 5 sections. And I think I asked Keisha to put in the chat box 2 links. The first link is the link to a performance, a full performance of it, which I thought was one of the best ones I've seen. From beginning to end, it really did capture a quality of profundity that you don't get from a lot of modern day performances. And then the second link is to the full text, which you really want to follow with and see what's happening, because it really is an unfolding musical drama. You have a tenor singing the part of the evangelist. You have the bass solo is the role of Jesus. You have another lower voice as the role of Pontius Pilate. So I really encourage you to watch this, because it's made a profound effect on myself, but these kinds of subjects, these ideas have made profound effects on people for thousands of years. Well, in Bach's case, for hundreds of years. But the subject at hand really affected human civilization for thousands of years. So the 5 sections of the Passion, of St. John Passion, is at first you have the arrest of Jesus Christ, which takes place in Kidron Valley. And then that proceeds to go to the denial. It unfolds towards the denial, which takes place in the palace of Caiaphas, where you have the priests, the high priests that are there. And then the third part goes through the court hearing with Pontius Pilate. And then the fourth part is the crucifixion and death of Jesus, of which I'm going to go through a particular part from this part, which is the crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ, because what Bach takes, he takes a specific aria that has some of the most profound meaning, and I'll ask Keisha to put up the translation. So this is the translation, and we'll hear a performance of it that gives you a real sense. And I'm going to go through it musically for you. But right here, this is the text for this part, which is quite late in St. John Passion. It comes up, like I said, after the crucifixion of Jesus. And then there's a beautiful chorale that this is the chorale. I'm just going to read you the text of the chorale that precedes this aria, which is, he thought carefully of everything in his last hour. He was concerned for his mother, chose someone to look after her. O man, act justly, love God and mankind. Then you can die without sorrow and need not grieve. That's the chorale that's sung by the entire chorus. And then after that, there is a back and forth between the evangelist and Jesus. Jesus takes the vinegar. And then as soon as he has taken the vinegar, he says, it is fulfilled, which is his mission to become the salvation for man has been fulfilled. So this aria takes place after Jesus has expressed that it's been fulfilled. And so this is going to be sung by a solo alto in this case. And it says, it is fulfilled. What comfort for all suffering souls. The night of sorrow now reaches its final hours. The hero from Judah triumphs in his might and brings the strife to an end. It is fulfilled. So I'd like to play the clip. And it'll begin with the evangelist, and then you'll hear Jesus with the lower voice saying, Es ist vollbracht, which is, it is fulfilled. And then you'll hear the rest of the aria. Okay. So I'm sorry, that never ceases to. That is actually part of the entire performance that I asked to be sent as a link in the chat box for everybody. So you have the complete performance, which is about an hour and 50 minutes long, plus the text. But think about how powerful that was when this idea was really elevated through the medium of music. And we began this discussion on the real question of whether or not this kind of beauty, this kind of truth is knowable. Were we endowed with the creative potential to know that this is true? How do you know that it's true? And I think part of it really has what plays a fundamental role in coming to know that it's intelligible is the questions of rediscovery. Because this is an idea that was composed in 1724, in the 1700s, which really kind of preceded what you saw in that population chart with a massive explosion. And if God made us in his image, that means we were endowed with a creative potential, which means, and he says, he doesn't say, but it says in Genesis that we have the potential to have dominion in and over this universe. What was responsible for creating the conditions for mankind to flourish so exponentially at that point, 1700s, 1800s? Of course, you had some real challenges and problems that mankind was facing also. But the real crux of the matter is that a rediscovery, when you relive these ideas, when that young boy is singing this aria, and when you watch the performance, you can see him in the background experiencing the entire unfolding of this musical drama. If that doesn't impact you, then I guess you can't call yourself human. But reliving it, re-experiencing these specific and profound ideas, it gives you, access to the creative minds of the past. And it allows you to make that creative potential something that is conscious, not just something that's arbitrary. Because what's really the problem? The problem is, well, a lot of people in society say, well, this is what wars have been fought upon, is that truth isn't knowable. You can only know things through your senses. But we have a special quality about us, which is unique to our species. And like I said, reliving something like this hundreds of years later, and the process of reliving it allows you to become conscious about what this thread of thought is. And you can really understand its effect, the fact that it is truthful because of its effect on society. And of course, there's a lot of responsibility on performers because you can't, what are you performing based on? And this is something we'll get into as we kind of investigate. But I just want to go through what you heard in that aria, because we will go forward. But I just want to remind you, and you really want to think through and keep it in your mind as a thought object, as an idea. You don't have to know what the notes are. You don't have to have musical background. If you're able to hear me, you have a mind, and that's what we're going to go with, because you have the capability of receiving this without any formal training. So this is I'll just remind people of what really the color of this was. I just wanted to remind you of it. When you think about the translation, you think about this conception of it is fulfilled. And when you read the Gospel of John up until Bach takes chapters 18 and 19 specifically, it's mostly centered, the St. John Passion is mostly centered around chapters 18 and 19. There are parts of Psalm 8 taken. There is poetry that's included that's written by a few other poets of the time, but the bulk of it is from chapter 18 and 19. And what is built up there, and as I said before, Bach chooses to emphasize the fact that Jesus, his life is eternal and omnipresent, not focus on the suffering per se. And so you can hear it in the music and as it unfolds. So when you hear this idea, es ist vollbracht, it comes up throughout the entire composition, right? You heard it at the beginning with the viola da gamba. Right? If you just hear es ist vollbracht, that is the theme that Bach uses to express this idea that it is fulfilled. It is now fulfilled. Mankind's suffering has been elevated to this comfort. And so it's an extremely profound idea. And what I'd like to do now, and people probably heard the beautiful middle part where he talks about Judah, the might of Judah. It just changes in character, but the crux of it, like I said, is what we just experienced with it is fulfilled. Now, let's travel a bit ahead to Beethoven. Beethoven doesn't necessarily overlap. I mean, this is about between 1820 and 22. So this is about 100 years later. And what I'm going to go through is part of what I would call his Triumphant Trilogy, the very last 3 piano sonatas that he composed, Opus 109, Opus 110, and 111, which were really conceived of and composed in and around as one whole part. And this is the second one of that Triumphant Trilogy in A flat major. And I think what I'd like to do is, and again, you're going to want to hear the entire thing. What I'm doing is taking a part of what would be considered the second movement. And you'll hear something very special. So let me just unfold this for you, and then we'll have a bit of a back and forth, and I can move into the final conclusion here. then it goes on. I don't know if you heard what was special, but it certainly is a direct quote, and a direct, I wouldn't say quote, I take that back, a direct reference to the idea that was set forth by Bach 100 years earlier, but really based on this conception that came from the Gospel of John, of such power that really, I mean, what is mankind? What are we here for? What is our purpose? Why were we given life? Why were we given the potential of divine spirit? But to do that and to use it for the greater good. What other purpose would there be? So I think this really, hopefully if people didn't catch it, I'd like to go back. I'm not going to play the entire thing, but the introduction to here. Do you hear the relationship? I'll play what Bach said in 1720. And it's a different key, so just hear the idea. You hear, you know, how the alto, that young boy that sang the aria, his first utterance is you hear it here in the Beethoven. Right? So in essence, what's happening between Bach and Beethoven is you're getting a fundamental transformation, because what happens, how you can measure whether mankind, whether these ideas are good, truthful, and knowable, is if it increases the potential for mankind to act in and over the universe, which means you implicitly have to basically throw out all the rules and really address what you thought was a system of knowledge that you had, a system of thought that you had. And by Bach doing this with the entire composition, you should definitely hear the entire thing, revolutionizes what Bach set forth. But it's an all-encompassed sort of unified thrust across generations, across time. There's a quality of a simultaneity of eternity within it, because you're not acting within time. You're participating in the arc of human development and what was responsible for shaping the betterment of mankind. So if you hear this in the context of how it unfolds, the entire composition, you certainly do realize how Beethoven revolutionizes what Bach set as a foundation. But that's why I would invite people to really dive into these and relive these, rediscover these ideas for yourselves, because these discoveries can't be necessarily taught to you. They can't be told to you. They have to be rediscovered, because you have a sovereign mind that has that potential for creative discovery. And only by reliving it, there's no shortcuts. And so, you know, as we face challenges in society, how we're going to be able to overcome these, how we're going to be able to transcend these challenges and make some breakthroughs, well, we'll have to embody this kind of beauty, and because it fortifies you, gives you the strength to move forward and not be practical and say, well, whatever it is, we're going to figure it out. Whether we have to use, whether it takes some time or not, it's worthwhile, because it really is the only path. So, I mean, essentially what we're really involved in investigating here is the essence of what classical art is. I'm sure a lot of people have those questions. What is quote unquote classical? I mean, even classifying music was somewhat of an operation to begin with. Classical period, the Baroque period, Romantic period, whatever, however it's classified, it's false. Classical means, are you able to demonstrate how it effectively transformed and shaped mankind's thought? And if you can demonstrate that, if you can evoke this quality of emotion from your audience, from the performers, from the composers, because that's really the issue at hand, is the essence of classical art is evoking a love of God, a love for mankind, and a love for the world. What other kind of conception could there be? What other conception would you want to adopt? What would you want to think? And I'm not saying that, I mean, we're absolutely open for discussion, but this is something that's worthwhile really investigating, because it's that passion, and it's also called agape, that love of God, or love for mankind, love for the world, that is the impulse which can create works such as this, which can create this masterpiece that Bach composed while he was, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you what he was doing at the time, because he was composing left and right. But really, it's that question of a passion for mankind, and a love for mankind. And so we have to have a focus on art in society, because this allows us to gain an insight into really how society should be run, how a developing and healthy society should be ordered in this way, in a coherent way, which doesn't mean that you don't have trials and tribulations. It's how you engage in the process to solve those trials and tribulations. So let me continue on here. So let me just remind you, let me just refresh on what Bach says, and then to Beethoven. So this is the Bach. Beethoven's first utterance of this, and he says it again later. It unfolds into this glorious composition, which we'll leave that for another presentation. I have lots of different ideas on how we can really target this. But let's just see how it comes back. This idea comes back again for Beethoven, and I will set it up for you. Where should I start? Okay. I'm sorry, let me just, okay. it's different. It comes back much different this time. There are specific markings by Beethoven that where he uses specific descriptions that he usually writes in Italian. It says perdendo forze dolente, which means losing strength, sorrowfully. And that's why you heard it. You may have wondered, oh, what's going on here? It's as if he's depicting a quality of weeping, because what you hear is not these long lines as you heard in the first one. In the first reference to this idea, sorry. It's different. You heard it more so the way you were familiar with it in the Bach. But this time when it comes back, as I said, he has a specific marking that says losing strength. Because if you've ever read any of Beethoven's letters, and I think all of us can identify with approaching qualities of despair at certain moments. That's just human. It's part of dealing with society. It's part of dealing with life. And for somebody like Beethoven, you have to really investigate how Beethoven or Bach were able to contribute such beauty and what you would call optimism, but it's a sense of passion to say that it's never, you don't have to despair. There is always a capability to intervene, to find hope, to find solidarity, and this question, participating in the eternal with history, with minds of the past, with these souls from the past. And so he is able to bring you to, metaphorically, to the depths of despair, but always use it to allow you to travel towards a solution, towards a resolution, which is extremely powerful. And let's see. Let's see. Okay. I'll take it from here. I'm going to take you through a journey here. me do let me just do that ending one more time, because it makes the point clear that you can resolve it within yourself. You can resolve the questions of any challenges that you face, whatever society can face. This is used as a metaphorical device. But I'll just take it from this end here. Okay. So I guess that comes to a certain conclusion. I say certain conclusion because it probably opens up a lot more questions than it answers. But I really just want to get back to see if we can come back full circle. And then also what we ended the discussion on is what has shaped the thought for human civilization, what has allowed mankind to grow in such a way, as in that population chart. We can do that again. We must do that again. And the way that we will be able to do it again is by reliving, rediscovering these ideas from Plato, from ancient Greece. Make these minds your mind, so that you have a metric. You have a metric to know how to express the good, how to use yourself for the greater good. So I think with that, I would like to thank people for going on this journey with me, and see if we can open it up for thoughts or questions from anybody.